Hi everybody, this is Ms. H, and today we are going to be beginning a new assignment. We are going to be making geometric abstract paintings, and we are going to be using shape and color in order to actually create two principles in our artwork, or one or the other principle, depending upon your choice. So the two principles we are going to be focusing on today, the first one is unity. And for those of you that have not heard of the word unity before, unity is a principle of design that is in art, and it is basically elements that come together that create a sense that the piece is together or whole. And so you can do that by choosing, like an example here, different sizes of the same shape. So circles being repeated gives a sense of unity throughout your whole design. Another option would be having colors that are close to each other on the color wheel, and that way it creates harmony, or colors that blend together much easier and have little amount of difference between them. There's also different, or the similar types of line. You can do similar brush strokes throughout the piece, similar textures. Anything that has a similarity to each other can help contribute to unity. The other alternating concept or principle of design that we are going to be focusing on is contrast. And so contrast is pretty much the opposite of unity. So think of unity as comparing. Contrast is when shapes could be wildly different from each other, like here, where you have all these differences of geometric shapes. We have circles, we've got organic shapes, we have some jagged shapes that are organic. There's a whole range that you could get, but they look very different. Now, you also can have colors that are on the opposite side of the color wheel, or you can have different types of line, create lots of contrast. And so contrast is basically when elements on a work of art or a paper such as this are wildly different from each other. You can tell that there is a lot apart in that piece, and it creates a lot of intensity based on how you use it. So you guys have to choose, and you have some shape tracers in your kits, whether or not you want to stick with unity or drawing the same shape over and over, or you want to have contrast and you want to choose different shapes in your bag. I am going to show you unity today, but if you wanted to do contrast, all you have to do is choose multiple shapes in your bag, and you'll pretty much come out with pieces that will have some form of contrast in them. You also can choose this later on in color if you want to show contrast through color. So I'm going to show you guys unity, and we're going to go through some steps to build this piece up here. You guys have your shape tracers. I do not have shape tracers with me, but I do have a bowl that I'm going to trace. And so you can use found objects as well, like this, or you can use your phone, or I have I could use this rectangular pastel thing and trace it. But I have my pencil and my eraser, and then I have my piece of paper here. So we're going to focus right now on unity. So I'm going to put this over here. I'm going to put both of them over here. And so really, to set up your composition, you're going to follow this in a little bit of a step-by-step manner. So the first step is getting your shape repeated and figuring out where you want to lay down your shape. So I want to be like Sonia Delaunay, and I want to have a ton of circles on my Orphism abstract piece. So I am going to start putting my circle down in places that I want, and I am just going to trace very lightly with my pencil, and I'm just trying to figure out kind of where I want all my circles right now. Now the cool thing is that in your shape tracer bag you have shapes that are different sizes, and so I can make a wide range of shapes out of this. I'm actually going to see, look, I made a mistake, look at that. And I drew lightly when I traced, because you want to make sure you draw light until you get it right. I'm actually going to use this bottle here too. So this is a smaller one. So paint bottles also come in handy. And if you do this weird overlap like this, you can always just erase it, hash the circle, and move on. So I'm just making all these different shapes. And this is repetition, so I'm really just using this circle over and over again. And look, I overlap my shapes too. So I could take this big one and overlap the big one. I think I actually have a big bottle of tempera paint here that I can actually use too. Provide slightly different. It's almost the same size as the big one. But this is going to fill my whole page. And look at how many shapes I'm drawing too. I'm not just drawing 1 or 2 shapes. I'm drawing a whole plethora of shapes, or a whole bunch of them. Because I really want this shape to fill the page. I'm actually going to draw a smaller circle in my circle. All right. You know what? I think I might do one more here. I'm drawing a lot of shapes. And so you can do this with triangles or squares. You could draw your own shapes as long as they are not all super duper different. I do have some repetition here, so if you have squares and triangles, you'll want to have some squares throughout, some triangles throughout. If you do circles and squares, you'll want to have squares and circles throughout. But it almost looks like on my page I have a bunch of bubbles, right? Kind of looks like I have a bunch of bubbles on my page. What we're going to do next is we are actually going to draw some lines through them to actually break up the pieces. And what I'm going to do is I have this wooden thing here, but you have a straight edge that you can use. And so what you're going to do is you're going to find parts where you're just going to put it across the page at a diagonal, and you're going to just draw a line right through. Just find different parts to put some lines. And you can even cross over those lines in other instances. My straight edge is really long, so I'm having some difficulties. But look at what happens when I start to draw. So like, look at this circle. This circle now becomes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different shapes because I'm breaking it up with these straight lines. And Sonia Delane had some lines going through some of her circles. She kind of made some hemispheres in some of hers. But she did also have very apparent circles in her work. And you're going to get that too when you do this as well. So you're going to just find some different areas to draw a bunch of different lines. You don't want to draw too many, but you also don't want to draw too little. So you really kind of want to break up some of these shapes a little bit. But not so much that you're going to have a ton of small ones. So I think that's pretty much good. I'm going to do this one here. And then I think that's pretty good. So that's pretty much what you do. And this is going to get us set up for the next step in our art piece, which is actually using color. So this is pretty much what you'll want to do for now. Thank you. Hello everybody, this is Ms. H, and I am going to be going over with you guys how to add some of the watercolors to your abstract geometric shapes. And what we are going to do today is we are focusing on 1, picking a color scheme for our piece, and 2, we are going to be focusing on adding the watercolor in and painting the actual shapes on the piece. So there are 2 principles that I want you guys to think about. So you're going to think about unity and you're going to think about contrast. And so unity, as we talked about in building the shapes, are similarities or elements in an art piece that show togetherness within a piece of art. And so contrast is actually, as we talked about before, showing differences in the elements that are shown on the pages, so on the art piece. So like for instance, with shapes we had circles versus squares and triangles versus weird organic shapes that are jagged or rounded in different forms, and unity was showing the same shape in different sizes. Well, color can do the same thing because color can be similar by being closer to each other on the color wheel and showing unity, or the farther apart a color is can show contrast on the color wheel. And so I've got a lot of circles that show unity in my piece, so I'm going to show some contrast by adding complementary colors or colors on the opposite side of my color wheel into this piece. So I've started a little bit here, and I've started adding some blue and orange. And so with the orange, I actually mixed some colors. So I would wet my brush. I would add my brush to the watercolor to pick up this yellow. I would put it in the little cup, and I would scrape my brush along the edge of the page, and that would actually help create the orange. And so I used yellow and red for that. So this color and this color. You guys have only yellow, red, and blue, so it's going to help you make all your colors. And then I already had blue as a primary, so I added that to this cup here. So I have my colors mixed. You always want to make sure you dip your brush in the water first before you dip your brush in the color. And that helps activate the watercolor pan, and when you scrape the brush on the edge, that creates a lot of the color to help get it in there. So I've got my piece started. We have a couple of boo-boos because we had some craftsmanship error in here, and this was because I wanted to show you some of the things you need to worry about when you paint your shapes in. So because I was hasty and I started painting all my shapes next to each other like this, my colors bled into one another because look, it's still wet. So because it's still wet, the colors are bleeding and mixing with each other on the paper more than I want them to. Luckily, I'm experienced enough to kind of fix it a little bit. I'm trying to blend the colors out. But a good thing is to just let it dry, and then you can fix it after the fact. But I'm going to show you a technique that's going to help. And so when you paint in your shapes, which is what our second step is, you are actually going to focus on planning out where your colors go, which is why I have this little speck system going on, this little dot system where I'm actually painting a dot to represent what color each of my shapes are. But you are going to color in all of the broken up shapes with alternating colors from your color scheme. And so I really want you guys to focus on trying to not paint the same color right next to each other. So like these two edges are next to each other right here, and they're orange and blue. I don't want orange and orange. I want blue and orange. So what I do is I get my colors ready, and I will actually mark out where colors are supposed to go. So like these two oranges aren't really next to each other, only on one corner. So that's okay to put them there. I can put orange there. I can put an orange there. And then I know, let me dip my brush in my water to clean it. I know I could put blue here. I can put, blue is already there. I can put blue there. I can put blue there. I can also put blue there. Although I'm running out of color on that. Ta-da! And so now as I build up this dot system, I can start coloring in some of my shapes in different areas. So I'm going to, because I already have an orange here, I'm not going to paint any blue ones around it. Instead, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to paint this other orange one right here. And so I am trying to stay as close to the edge as possible in my broken shape here from the circles, but not mess up anything around it. And so because this shape is drying, I'm not painting anything around it. I will come back. It might be nice just to paint all of the orange shapes first, and then go into the blue. But if you use a dot system, it'll help you figure out where all your shapes need to go. And so now, because a blue would go here, I can make a little dot where the blue is going to go, because that should be fine. And I can make a mental note that that will be blue. So now that I have some orange shapes done, I'm going to paint some blue shapes in. I'm actually going to dip it right in this one because that's the same color and it's much more vibrant. How bright that color is. So that's pretty much what you're doing. You're going to paint shapes that are close to each other, and then you're going to fill this whole page up with all of these shapes being in watercolor for the same color scheme throughout the whole piece. And if you have a big shape like this one, so like this one, it'd take forever to fill in with this round brush, right? you can use this wash brush. You just got to be very delicate. So I can fill in this color much quicker if the shape is bigger and can support this brush. But if it's small, you definitely want to use the round brush. The round brush is going to be your friend in this lesson for sure. And that's pretty much it. Just keep filling in shapes. Fill in different shapes for different areas, and eventually you can connect them. And for this, you can fix it after. The main thing we want to focus on is making sure that we keep as best craftsmanship as possible and keep the shapes as crisp as you can. And even if you have to paint a shape that's already next to a wet one, just paint close to the edge but not on the edge. And that's pretty much it. So you guys are going to continue filling in your shapes. Fill a shape in with the color scheme you want until you reach the whole edge. And that is pretty much it. And the only other thing I will say is that you are not to fill in an entire circle. You are to fill in the broken shapes. Don't fill in a whole circle. Only the broken shapes. And that's pretty much it.